Welcome to the Musecast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Well, good Tuesday to you all. We are so glad that you are joining us. We're glad that you're here. Welcome to the Musecast. I'm Shawna Boren, and Dan Kent is here. And today we are going to be continuing the conversation, unpacking a little bit Tara Beck's sermon from Sunday. And it was a really interesting, good weekend. A lot of behind the scenes craziness going on. Dan, what was the most interesting or intriguing thing from your weekend?
That's
You'd
a
like
good
to
question.
share?
Yeah, it was really neat. So we do maple syrup on our property.
Yeah.
And we finished up our maple syrup like Friday. And so that was fun to kind of to start the weekend with being done with, cooking maple syrup. And then Barbara went to her friend's dad's house in Wisconsin, and he's got a huge maple syrup operation. And so I got to sit home and just kind of relax and have a full day off, which I haven't had in a long time. So I appreciated that. And what I did is I ordered hold on, I'm not supposed to. I ordered, I don't want Barbara to know. I ordered a Columbo poster for my office. So
Yes!
we're excited about that.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it. Okay, so hey, you guys, don't tell. It's a secret. Shh. It's going to be a surprise. Awesome. That is so cool. I will have to show you, speaking of your Columbo poster, I will have to show you something that my kids got for me Christmas, maybe? I don't know what something where they got me a present, and it's a Jessica Fletcher bobblehead. And
Nice.
I love it. She's so cute.
Yeah.
All right.
That's from Murder, She Wrote, right? Jessica Fletcher.
Yes.
Did you know that the same writers, it's the same writers for Murder, She Wrote and Columbo. Yeah.
I know that.
Isn't that wild? And I also found this out this weekend. Columbo was based on Father Brown. That's kind of one of the Father Brown, and then one other guy. They kind of married those two to come up with Columbo. And we also love Father Brown in this household.
Yeah.
So it's all connected. It's all connected.
It is all connected. I think maybe watching those shows is how I deal with any kind of residual anger I may be holding on to. I can kind of just purge it through watching the good old murder mystery.
Yes. I hope that's healthy. Because I think we do that too.
We do that, yeah. All right. Well, like I said, we got to hear from Tara Beth Leach, aka Tara Beth, this past weekend, and she continued in our Change of Heart mini-series, which is a part of Sermon on the Mount, and she talked about those verses that we had been hovering over in regards to anger, and then she kind of carried us forward a little bit. And so, Dan, you get to take it away with our summary.
Sounds good. Yeah. Tara really kind of honed in on sort of a central theme at Woodland Hills. We talk about our 4 directions of love, between God and self and other and creation. And she really looked at the importance of our relationships with each other, even to the extent that what Jesus is saying here is that don't come to God if you have problems between your brothers and sisters. If you have a problem with a brother or sister, take care of that. You can't, there's this temptation, and I feel it. I mean, there's to like, just be with God. I can't handle all these people. I just want to be with God. And, God, you are so wonderful. You are so great. These guys are all bozos, but I like you. I mean, God's like, no, you can't do that. You need to make things right between your brothers and sisters, and then you can come to me. And just how radical that is. Just what's so radical about that is that, you have all of these other gods, and I'm just spewing this off the top of my head. This is unplanned, so maybe I might say something really stupid here. But you have all these other gods who demand worship. And here you have the Christian God who demands reconciliation and peace and peacemaking with your brothers and sisters before worship. And that really is the ultimate act of worship, is to be in loving relationship with others. And that's played out in this passage here where Jesus is like, look at all of the work that you had to do to get here to give an offering. But I'm saying that that's all meaningless if you have a problem with a brother or a sister, go take care of that first.
Mm-hmm.
And just to exalt how important it is that we have right relationships with each other. And that's a pretty profound teaching. And it's a hard one to take serious. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, the sermon. And I have a question for you too. So why don't you, I want to hear your thoughts first.
Have turned.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Tara Beth's message was entitled Radically Righteous. And I was sharing with Dan how anytime that phrase or term righteousness comes up, I immediately have to do a little bit of mental gymnastics to remember all we're talking about there. That term righteousness is right relatedness. That's what it is. Right relatedness to God, right relatedness to others. And like Dan said, and a couple of other directions that we talk about here at Woodland Hills, and Tara Beth did focus on the right relatedness to others. And I think it's so simple to, not simple. It is easy and tempting to go, that kind of situation would never happen. We would never find ourselves walking to the temple a week's journey and then, all of a sudden remember something and then have to leave our offering and walk back a week like that. Just no. Okay. Most likely not. That specific thing wouldn't happen. However, think about the times when when you're just trying to go before the Lord, maybe it's in prayer or in worship or in a service or something. And if you remember, hey, I said or did something hurtful to my best friend or someone I care about. I think what Jesus is getting at in a very basic, simple way is saying, you can't fully engage in your worship with me until you make that right, until you settle that. We have to be able to be rightly related to others. Just like you said, we can't just be like, ugh, they're a bunch of bozos and I'm just going to focus on you, Lord.
Right.
No, we are a communal people. We are meant to relate to one another as well as to God. And if the Spirit brings up a situation in which, Shawna, that situation there, you didn't handle that well, or you acted in a hurtful manner, or you said something that was harsh or hurtful. Before you can fully enter into this beautiful dynamic worship of you and I need you to make that right. At least try to reconcile that and make it right. I don't think it means, because I've heard this where people get stuck here. I don't think it's that you have to constantly be searching for any and everything that you may not even know that you're in a place where you don't know that you are unreconciled to someone, or you've hurt someone, or you have anger. I don't think it's that, because that can just get to be a place of just torture mentally. But I think it's if you find yourself entering into that place of worship, prayer, just communion with God, and something comes to mind, deal with that, because it comes to mind for a reason. I think it's very similar to that dashboard thing we've been talking about with anger. It's a warning signal. Well, let's not ignore it. Let's deal with it. And let's not think that our outwardly things of worship and adoration of God supersede our interpersonal relating to others, because that's kind of what the Pharisees were about, and we're called to be something totally different. So again, off the top of my head, just some things I've been running through. Good. So
and it reminds me, I just happened to have this on my desk. It's Dallas Willard's Divine Conspiracy.
Yes.
And I was looking through it for a citation, and I came upon this passage where he said, what God is saying is that we can't have one posture toward God and then a different posture towards our brothers and sisters. There's a deep incongruity there. Our posture, if our posture toward God is different than our posture toward our brothers and sisters, then our posture toward God is not right. There's something wrong with it. And that's so challenging. And it brings me to this question. I come from a long line of curmudgeons and hermits. And I have a lot of my family, I got family members who live in shacks in the middle of nowhere, and they go to town once a week to get basic needs, and that's it. And they don't like people. And I oftentimes struggle with, I don't like a lot of people. And yet I'm called to love them. And so my question for you is, can you love people that you don't like?
Yeah. So my, growing up, my mother used to always tell me, you can love someone, but not like the way in which they act toward you or others. because we're good Christian folk and we're supposed to love all.
Right.
So I think if we want to like parse that apart, I guess I would say you can love people. You can ascribe worth to people. You can see that they have value. But if you say to yourself, I don't like them, and that I don't like them causes you to devalue them, then I think that's dangerous. Again, this is not thus saith the Lord. This is thus saith Shawna Boren.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's really good.
You just have to be careful with what you allow to like fester in your heart.
That's right.
We are people with personalities and chemical makeups and, temperaments. And I don't think we always all gel beautifully, unfortunately. And so there are some personalities and temperaments, and I'm sure you know all about this, Dan, that are more congruent with others, and some that kind of clash others. And I think I don't think that that's necessarily bad. I just think you have to be careful with what we do with it and what we let fester in our hearts towards others. And so if we find ourselves devaluing people or not seeing them as worthy, or, wishing ill upon them, or just even, we've talked about this before, like just discarding them and not thinking that they're worth your time, then I think you've got some heart work to do, and allow the Lord to speak to you there.
That's really good. No, that's awesome. I was talking to Barbara last night and about this passage that I keep coming back to. Really, the last 2 years, maybe you've done this where if you've taught or preached, where you find yourself coming back to the same verse all the time, and it's like, really, do I have to come back to that verse again and again and again?
Right.
And then at some point you realize, okay, this is a problem with me. I think that this verse is speaking to, and for me, Matthew 9:36, where it says that Jesus saw the crowds and he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, and that to me is something like my own what's it called, misanthropy. That sort of like helps me deal with my own kind of misanthropic ideas, that is like feelings of not liking humanity, is to have that more compassionate sort of look where, they're harassed and helpless. This is, it's not that they're unlikable. It's not like they're horrible. They're harassed and helpless. And no matter where they are, whether it's on the political left or the political right, it's just different flavors of harassed and helpless. And and when you see the vitriol and the anger and all of that stuff, it's like these existential spiritual cries for help is what they are. And that's helped me to, like you said, to love people, even though I really don't like how they're living and what they're doing and what they're saying and how they're treating one another. That's been really helpful for me.
Yeah. What's helped me is, especially, let's just be real, in our current climate, and the climate we seem to have been stuck in the last year and a half, it's easy to read something or see something and just have disdain, toward an action or a people group. And I have to work to remember that I can't assume that's who they are. That is a symptom of something that's going on in their heart. That's something that's not aligned with who God says that they are. And so that is the one way in which I can try to enter into a bit of empathy and sympathy. Because otherwise it's really hard just to look at behaviors and look at actions and look at, all the things that just, like I said, would cause my heart to feel disdain. And I would hate for anyone to judge me by just my actions that they see, if I'm having a bad day or, you know what I'm saying? So I think we have to be careful with that. Although on the other hand, we could say, well, your actions kind of speak to who you are. Okay, well, yeah, to an extent. However, I still think it's symptoms that are arising out of some sort of woundingness, or, like I said, misalignment with who God says that those folks are. So work in progress, Dan. Work in progress.
Yeah, totally. And that same kind of like, compassion that I have for myself, I need to be better at showing that toward other people. It's interesting. The 9:36 passage, he had compassion on them for they were harassed and helpless. this is a guy who holds people to a higher standard than even the Old Testament. And yet, even with that high standard, he still has that profound compassion. And then, when their bozo behaviors get so extreme that they even torture him and put him on a cross, he still has this posture of they know not what they do. By looking at what they're doing, it's easy to say, I don't like these people, I hate these people, but understanding that they're deluded, they're operating from a delusion. And just like I would have compassion on somebody who is schizophrenic, who was, knocking over my flower pots because he thought that they were demons trying to get in my house, I would have compassion on that guy. I wouldn't be defensive about my flower pots. In the same way, Jesus looks at the people who are putting him through a lot worse than anything anybody will ever put me through. And yet he was able to have that compassion for them. And so that for me is like, okay, I need to have that same compassion. And the reality is that when I look at people and I get frustrated with them, there's a chance that the reason why I'm frustrated with them is because they're living under a delusion and they know not what they do. But there's probably an equal chance that the reason why I'm frustrated with them is because I'm living in a delusion and I know not what I do. And so
it goes both ways.
It goes both ways. That's right. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting when we look at Jesus and, like you said, and the compassion that he felt. And what I want to make sure we communicate is that compassion didn't prevent him from setting certain things right when they needed to be set it right, and by challenging folks. And so I think that is very clear in scripture. The one thing I want to kind of dovetail into and kind of get your thoughts on is this whole reconciliation piece that Tara Beth kept talking about. So kind of the way I've thought through it in my brain is we've been talking about anger and the dangers of ignoring the anger or pretending like it doesn't exist, ignoring that warning light, the dangers of partnering with anger and going on an unhealthy journey.
Yeah.
And then leading into disrupted relationships, maybe because we've held on to the anger or what, there's a variety of reasons why. And so then the need for reconciliation. I'm going to confess, Dan, and this is why I want to talk about this a little bit. I'm going to confess that whenever someone brings up reconciliation, I get really nervous. I get really nervous. I believe in being right related. I truly do. I know that's scriptural. I know that's kingdom. I just get nervous because my mind immediately goes to folks who are maybe in unreconciled relationships, but for good reasons. And for healthy reasons. And I never want someone to hear us say, you better get reconciled. So do you think, Dan, let me ask it this way. Is there a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation? And can you have right relatedness without being in direct, constant daily relationship? Am I laying that out pretty well?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that boy, there's so many ways to approach this. Let me say this. One of the things about God is he's so patient, it's like, first of all, it's been a couple thousand years since Jesus has been here, and it's like, it doesn't seem like there's any hurry to putting a bow on all of this. And so there's this sense in which, okay, look, if we're going to live in all eternity with each other, we need to get reconciled in the sense that we need to be in relationship with each other. But that doesn't mean that has to happen right away. And a lot of times I think reconciliation might even require separation. It might even require space apart. And we see that with God and Jesus in the Bible, where God takes space from his people. And, in even to the chagrin of the prophets, how long will you stand far off, O Lord, and things like that. And so sometimes, when Israel breaks covenant, God takes that space there. And, but his ultimate goal is to be reconciled. But that's from a God who is forgiving Israel, for sure. He's abounding in steadfast love and forgiveness, the Old Testament says. But even then he takes some space. So I absolutely think that the long-term reconciliation, I think many times requires short-term separation. And, but I think forgiveness should be a more pressing goal in the sense that you let go of that person, you let go of that wrong, and you don't seek to retaliate and so
Yeah.
forth. You seek to take care of yourself for sure, and to heal yourself, but not to seek retribution and things like that. So that's what I think. And you know, I've even seen like relationships where, you know, sometimes they're maybe even like toxic and maybe even violent, where the people are separated, and it's like, yeah, you have to separate there just for safety. And but I've seen relationships where even in those situations, 20, 30 years later, the two people do come back and they have a friendship or some type of relationship. Usually if they have kids, that's sort of the centerpiece of the relationship. And so, but that doesn't have to, that level of reconciliation, I don't think has to happen on a timetable. In fact, something that I've been learning as I've been reading about racial reconciliation is that one of the frustrations of the Black community is that whites want to hurry up that reconciliation, and they don't want to take ownership of like some of the stuff in our history and so forth. And so that's just the perception of some of these writers that white people want to like sweep all the problems under the rug and get to the good part of just living in happiness together. And
we're good. We're reconciled.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And what I'm learning is that, okay, well, maybe there are some other important things for that relationship that need to be taken care of first before we have any type of quality reconciliation going forward.
Just to piggyback on that aspect of what you just said, I think you can have this coming together of recognizing there's been some wrongs here, maybe not specifically between you and I, but between our people groups. And so let's look at that. And that's not going to be resolved in one conversation.
Right.
It's not even going to be resolved with attending a couple of protests and, you know, holding up a sign. And, you know, that's not going to be, it takes work, and it's continual. And I think there are layers to it. And the frustration is when folks don't want to work through the layers. They just want to say, I got it. I see it. That's not a reality anymore. Let's just move on and be happy. Right. And we can't always do that because there's so many things that bubble up that are tied to some of those root things that we have to deal with. So yeah.
And I'm a move on, let's be happy guy. That's totally me. Like on my gravestone, would be what it says. He was a move on and be happy guy. And and so this is something that I'm trying to learn how, okay, can I really move on and be happy if these things are just swept under the rug? And what do you do with the things other than, in fact, I'm so good at moving on and being happy, I don't really understand some of the alternatives to sweeping things under the rug. That's how, harassed and helpless I am. So,
oh, Dan, I have compassion on you.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is a little bit of that already not yet paradigm that we've talked about at Woodland before, and that Tara Beth talked about some this weekend as well, is the reconciliation is maybe in part and not yet. I mean, like there will be a time when strife will cease, anger will cease, hurting one another will cease, like all of those things that would cause us to be not rightly related to one another, those things will cease, and the fullness of reconciliation will come. But in the here and now, we are to work toward that. And I like that you said that sometimes though that does require space, and that is okay. Because I think we have to remember we're dealing with like real people and real situations and real relationships and real life. And in reality, sometimes there has to be a space, a pause, so that we can deal with our stuff, so that we can, get the healing that we need, so that we can forgive, so that we can be reconciled if that's what happens. I love that
there's an authenticity there, it's like you can't, the deep connection, there's no shortcuts to it. You have to process a lot of that stuff, and it just takes time and work. And so,
that's good. Why do you think, Dan, that relationships are so important to God's kingdom? Like, to use your words, like he would say, before you come to me and have this amazing worship, I need you to go to your brother or sister and get that right. Like he would even, it seems like he would prioritize that other's relationship before this relationship. Why do you think relationships are so important to God? Don't you think, like, as a God, he would, like, first and foremost want your glory and your worship and your adoration and all those things?
I love your pagan God's voice. That's a great voice. That's yeah. Jesus says in John 17 that his prayer for his people is that we may be one, even as the Trinity is one. Even in that same baffling unity of the Trinity, that's what Jesus wants for us. And Acts, I think 27 says that God created all of this stuff in the hopes that he would have a people who reach out to him and to seek him, even though he is not far from any of us. And there's this sense in which God wants to have this, he wants to overflow his triune character into a bigger body, into a bigger community. And that's just, like, on the face of it, what God wants. And so in order to have that oneness, that we may be one, even as the Trinity is one, well, the Trinity is love, and the Trinity is this steadfast eternal peace. And so that's what that means, is we need to work through that anger and hatred and belittlement and self-exaltation and ego and all that kind of stuff. So that's the what. The why, I think, is that I think that it's the only thing that works for all eternity. Anger doesn't work for eternity. Hatred doesn't work eternally. The only thing that is self-perpetuating and enjoyable for all eternity is love, agape love.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think God is calling us into that, because it's the only thing that works in any meaningful sense. And so he's calling us to work toward that now.
It's so beautiful. It is what will sustain us forevermore. And that is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I always think of where it says we will be known by our love for one another. Like, this is a real deal. And I think my one big takeaway, as we're kind of circling and landing the plane here, my one big takeaway from this message and from our conversation is that we can't leave the little things, or what we may deem as little things, unsettled. I think that when we are kingdom people, when we follow Jesus, that relationship, that Spirit of God should incarnate every aspect of our life. So we can't just be like, I'm a good worshiper, I attend all the right services, and I say all the right prayers, and I give the money to the right sources, and think that we can treat people around us horribly, or we can act out in anger towards others. Those can't, like, that doesn't work in God's economy. Like, it's intertwined, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And even, like, the further on in the verse that Tara Beth shared, I think, like, verse 25, 26, when it talks about going to court, like, we need to make sure that we're taking care of our business properly, ethically, morally, with integrity. Like, I feel like really my takeaway is that God with us should incarnate every single aspect of our lives. And so we can't just say, oh, that's something over there, but this is my church stuff, this is my spiritual stuff. No, it's, like, all encompassing, and it should affect everything and inform everything. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's really well. I can't say it better. I think it's well said.
Yes, you could. Okay. Okay, then share with the Musecast community, what is your great takeaway from the weekend and our conversation? What do you want to leave the folks with?
I think, well, it'll be a little redundant, but just sort of a realization at the importance of my relationship with my brothers and sisters, and that God is not a like, what would you call it? He's not a get out of relationship free card. It's not like this place. I don't like people. I'm going to just hang out with God. And believe me, some of these stories and these writings and the romance of the monk life, being out in nature, out on a mountain someplace, boy, that's, I like that. The introvert in me is just like, yeah, let's do that. But, God's challenges that and says, no, it doesn't work. You need to do these hard things, which is, establish these relationships and be in community with your brothers and sisters. And it's hard, but it's ultimately the only thing that works for all eternity. And God's calling us into that now. And the way Tara Beth said it is I think she said the future is intruding on the now, and God's invitation is to be ready for that and to be a part of that.
Amen to that. Yeah, I love what you said about the triune God, Father, Son, and Spirit, and how they are in loving a relationship with one another, and they want that for us. And so I have to believe that they're on to something.
That's right.
I have to believe that they know, as tempting as it may be to go and live on the mountaintop, just you, yourself, and your berries and I don't know what else would be up there. There's something to relating to others and being Christ-like toward others and experiencing those relationships. And when there is brokenness in those relationships, doing what we can to mend that brokenness.
That's right.
Sometimes we can't do it all. Yeah, right? So
amen.
That's that. Are we good?
I think we're good.
Have we hashed it out? We've unpacked it? All right.
I think we've unpacked it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We hope to see you again next week. Remember, you can always send in questions. We do have a Musecast email, musecast@whchurch.org. And join us this weekend when we continue the conversation. We're still in Sermon on the Mount. We're still digging into the words of Jesus. We're still going to be challenged, and then we'll still talk about it next week. So we hope to see you then. Be well, everyone.